We're in a cost of living crisis fuelled by high food and energy prices. And now there's a labour shortage too, a shortage of people to do the jobs that are needed to keep the UK economy growing. So what are the government going to do about it? Ministers say they have a plan. I met the Work and Pensions Secretary Therese Coffey for a bird's eye view of the capital and to find out what that plan is. Therese Coffey, thanks for coming on the show, although we're in a pod, not in the studio, which actually I think I prefer. I think I should do all my interviews in here, but anyway, that's a whole different thing. Look, thanks for coming on the show. I went back to the last time we did a sit-down and I interviewed you, and it was just after the first lockdown. It was in October 2020. You were preparing at the department for potentially 4 million people unemployed, and at the final quarter of that year, redundancies were at the highest level on record. You'll remember it. Fast forward 2 years, we've now got record unemployment. Job vacancies are at record numbers too, 1.3 million, and we've got shortages in certain sectors. Can you unpack it a bit for me about what's going on? Because the market looks quite confusing.
Well, of course, when we went into COVID, we didn't quite know what the impact was going to be. What we did know is that we had to close down significant parts of the economy. Yeah. And in particular, people who may be on quite low incomes, so whether it's hospitality, retail. And that's why we prepared and were ready and absorbed, actually, a record number of UC claimants coming in who needed help at the time. So fast forward that we recruited people to help people get ready to get back into work. You know, we had a few fits and starts and during the pandemic. But I think what was important was obviously the importance of the furlough scheme. Yeah. So a lot of people stayed attached to their employers. But also, as we started to get vacancies coming, we were well placed, having built that relationship with claimants to get them ready and to get them into work. But we needed quite a big shove, I think, at the beginning of this year, because we did have record and still have huge numbers of vacancies. And we just needed to make sure, learning from what we did with Kickstart, with the young people, getting that right across our entire claimant group.
So you've got more people into work, but what people watching will be seeing are shortages in industries. I went to my dad's village in Norfolk over the Jubilee weekend, and the local pub had shut down because they couldn't get staff. Aviation shortages, mayhem in airports. What's going on in terms of shortages? Because it's not an immigration issue. If you actually look at the figures, 18% of the current workforce are immigrants. That's the highest proportion ever. So what's going on? Why are there so many vacancies?
Well, we got 500,000 people into work in just the last 5 months, and learning by bringing employers into our job centre, making sure that we got rapid turnaround of decisions and coaching people if they hadn't been successful. But I think more broadly, what we've seen of the 1.3 million vacancies, quite a lot of those are high skill.
You're right.
And we need to keep working now on how we bring people out of economic inactivity. And that's why I'll be working, and I'm working with other departments across government, how we make that happen. I don't think it is about more immigration.
Do you need more immigration for certain sectors, do you think? Do you accept that, or you don't?
Well, one of the things that we have is the Migration Advisory Committee in regards to thinking about high-skilled jobs where we don't have sufficiently enough people. And that was one of the things of leaving the European Union. We were able to move to our points-based immigration system. We have seen a lot of people come into the country. But thinking a little bit more broadly, you were talking about rural Norfolk and aspects of that. What we've done, for example, I give you a great example, in Maidstone in Kent, we brought together farmers, we brought together our claimants, and we actually did some kind of trials, some work coach experience, and we actually started filling jobs in those sort of fruit picking areas. So we can make it happen by bringing our employers together, and that's been the success of Way to Work.
But Therese Coffey, in terms of where we are now, we've got 1.3 million vacancies, but the other thing that is quite surprising, I find surprising, is that we have 5.3 million people, 1 in 4 people of working age in this country are either unemployed or economically inactive and claiming some sort of benefits. That's an astonishing figure. I was surprised by that. What's going on?
Well, this also includes people who aren't medically capable of working. It also includes people with caring responsibilities. So there'll be a variety of reasons of people who are job ready in order to do that. Well, we have seen, we now have a record of 3 million people on PIP, our disability benefit.
If you think about it, 5.3 million people economically inactive, 1.3 million job vacancies. If you get 1 out of 5 of those people back into work, you fix the problem, right, without further immigration. Is that your aim? Is that the goal?
Well, my focus is on the about 1.4 million people who we pay benefits to, who are actively looking for work. And as we've talked about, some of the vacancies may not be readily accessible for those people. But when I think about some of where we're trying to fill vacancies around the country, we are also needing employers to be flexible. This is about where we are trying to help people who have got some challenging health conditions and how we can help them get into work in a more proactive way. But nevertheless, Beth, there's a number of people who went on furlough, seem to have saved a lot of money, haven't necessarily wanted to go back to the jobs they were doing before. It may be they found a job during furlough, another job which was more to their suiting. But I think we've seen a greater thing of people being wanting a different life-work balance.
Yeah. People watching this will be thinking about their summer holidays and looking at the baggage claim at Heathrow in absolute horror, thinking, is my holiday going to get messed up because of worker shortages? The airlines are calling out for a temporary visa scheme to try and sort out this short-term issue. Would you rule out a temporary visa scheme? The reason I'm asking is because people are watching going, I just want it fixed. You know, I want to go on holiday, I want it fixed.
Well, indeed, but I don't believe that the visa route is what is being considered within government. I just know that we are helping people currently who are out of work to find jobs in our airports around the country.
ONS figures out today, UK household incomes fell for a 4th consecutive quarter at the start of the year. It's the longest run decline in household income since 1955. Adjusted for inflation, incomes are 1.3% lower than a year ago.
Well, look, we know that inflation is high and we know it's having an impact. That's why we responded with the cost of living payment measure that we've taken.
People, isn't it? I mean,
but we've added an extra £15 billion. The first payments will be going out to low-income households next month, and they'll be staggered throughout the year in how we help people, as well as the money going to every household to help with energy costs.
Do you find it difficult in your job, though, because you are dealing with people that are really at the bottom of income scales, that typically that they feel price rises much more acutely than the middle classes because they don't have disposable income. Is it hard in your job that you think, I can't do enough for people?
Well, I do know that one of the best ways I can help them is to help them get a job.
Yeah.
To really boost their pay packet.
But I remember in the pandemic, your department really pushed, for example, the £20 a week on universal credit, that made a huge difference to people. That was a way you could it cost £6 billion a year. I mean, do you kind of think, if I could, I would put that policy back?
I don't anticipate a particular uprating that's linked to £20, but as ever, I will do my annual review later in the year.
I interviewed Gordon Brown also this week for the show, and he's a former Chancellor and thinks a lot about this too. And he said to me that he's worried that charity is becoming the last line of defence for people struggling instead of the welfare state. What's your response to that? Do you think that's an unfair observation?
As I've pointed out, we've put together just in a matter of a few weeks ago, or less than 2 months ago, a package of support of £15 billion to help
and some of the criticism of it was that it wasn't targeted enough at those on lower incomes, that it wasn't targeted enough, like some of the blanket measures, like a fuel duty cut. £2.4 billion for that, but it wasn't.
Well, that was part of the earlier package in terms of the £22 billion before.
Okay, well, let's talk a bit now about you. Now, before you came into politics, you're a scientist by background, aren't you?
Well, I did a PhD in chemistry, but I didn't carry it on in work.
And then you were a businesswoman.
Yeah.
But did you always want to go into politics? Were you a young Conservative?
I was a young Conservative. I think I grew up in Liverpool in the 80s, and I'm 50 now, but actually as a child, I did actually have a Conservative MP. People might find that hard to believe. It wasn't for very long. And then I felt my home city of Liverpool was ruined by militant Labour. You know, the analogy I can see with Momentum today and recently is very, very clear. And I just realised that politics mattered. Both my parents were teachers. They were part of the gang that received their redundancy notice, which was then repealed. And I remember at the time saying to my mum, this is like really worrying. She said, oh, don't worry, it's some trick so we'll all be fine. And I just thought that's not the way to run my city. And I actually thought Margaret Thatcher was doing a great job in the rest of the country. So I got engaged.
I didn't know that. I didn't know you were from Liverpool, actually. You haven't got a Liverpudlian accent at all.
I can turn on the accent.
Okay.
I went to Paris for the Champions League final. So it was great.
Did you?
I did.
So I didn't know this about you.
I'll tell you, getting into the stadium, it's like being in a mosh pit that wasn't very pleasant.
Was it loads of aggro there? Did you get in?
I don't think it was very well handled.
Did you have any troubles there, or were you okay?
Absolutely. I wasn't pepper sprayed, but that was part of the squash, honestly. It was like being in a mosh pit where you didn't want to be.
Oh,
no, it wasn't great.
I
wasn't frightened, but it was uncomfortable.
Oh.
But nevertheless, it wasn't even a great result for us.
The other thing that I know about you, but lots of people might not know about you, is that you're also a devoted Roman Catholic. Now, in terms of your faith, does it affect or guide political decisions for you at all, or is it something that you keep for Sunday only? Do you separate those things out in your life?
Well, I don't think I wear my religion on my sleeve, so to speak, but it's undoubtedly a part of who I am. And I hope that comes through in a lot of the ways that we try and help people. In my role as Secretary of State, we want to be compassionate and considered in what we're doing and helping some of the most vulnerable people in our society. There are other issues which get decided in Parliament on great ethical issues of the day. And so, of course, I'll participate in that. But I'm a Democrat as well.
And I just realised we're coming down, so I'm going to jump straight to this question. Just in terms of women's rights, Roe versus Wade. Last week, the Supreme Court of America effectively ended the constitutional right to abortion for millions of women across the US. The PM said it was a step backwards. What did you think about that?
Well, it's a US Supreme Court decision. In this country, Parliament's legislated to allow access to abortion. There, it's a different debate, federal versus states. And the Supreme Court have come a different decision on who should decide that. Is it the courts or should it be legislatures? We already have this situation, so abortion law isn't going to change in this country. People will still have access to it.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, the reason I asked was he's obviously a Catholic too. He told me that the number of abortions in the UK he thought was one of the saddest aspects of British modern life. Do you agree with that?
I think there's a number of things where people either give up hope or don't think they can cope with certain things in a broad varieties of way. Of course, I would prefer for people who didn't have abortions, but I'm not going to condemn people that do.
And would you like to see the right to abortion enshrined in British law, which is now the live debate?
We don't need it because we already have legislation that provides access to abortion.
And just finally, I've been described as one of the fully paid up human beings in public life. You like a drink, you like a bit of karaoke, you occasionally like a cigar. That's your way of letting off steam, is it? What's your signature track?
Oh, gosh. I don't know, it keeps changing. We're having a great time. At the moment, it's Shower and Becky G. Okay. There we go, dancing in the mirror, singing in the shower. But no, that's a slightly different thing. Look, a few years ago, I was pretty ill. It's reinforced my joy for life, and I'll keep living life to the full. But I'm a professional, always get the work done. Yeah.